Ever since we had the disappointment that is Little Nightmares 3, it was only natural for us to anticipate REANIMAL, made by Tarsier, the guys behind the two good Little Nightmares entries. After having finished the game, I think there's definitely a lot of really interesting stuff to talk about, but before we get into that, I just want to clear this up. REANIMAL isn't trying to be a Little Nightmares sequel, but it also doesn't have enough of a unique identity to class it as its own thing. It's weird, and I've been so excited to share my thoughts on this, so bear with me. REANIMAL employs a new camera, switching from the 2.5D of Little Nightmares to something similar but different? Like, it can still get locked into 2.5D at times, but it can also go fully 3D and you can turn around 360 degrees at times. I thought the camera was worth mentioning because at a glance, that is by far the biggest differentiation between it and Tarsier's old games. This new camera allows for a ton of visual experimentation. I love the way it moves through the scenes. It's so dynamic and cinematic. Little Nightmares has always been very creative in many ways, but REANIMAL just takes it to a whole new level because at times, the combination of amazing visuals and cinematography would make me feel like I'm watching a movie rather than playing a video game. Now, I could give you a bunch of examples, but the one that stuck out to me is when you're running away from the mother and her children, and the camera shifts on these spiral stairs. It just looks so good, right? However, there is a curse that comes with giving players more freedom to look and move around wherever they please. It's not as clear where you're meant to go at times. The simplicity of Little Nightmares came from its linearity. For most of the game, you'd go from left to right, in some cases moving backwards and forwards, but the point is that you always knew the general direction of progression. I don't know if anyone else has had this issue, but in REANIMAL, I got lost quite a few times because they couldn't make it obvious what you had to do. There's the part where I first got to the cinema and encountered a bunch of locked doors, so I left the building to look elsewhere. I searched and searched, I backtracked, trying to find any clue of what to do next. Eventually, I had to shamefully pull up a walkthrough and look at this, dude. That's where I had to go the entire time. I didn't see this small crevice because I couldn't turn the camera. REANIMAL definitely does a lot of picking and choosing how the camera works at what points, which is fair. They've got an artistic vision they're trying to fulfill, but this sort of in-between of 2.5D and full 3D removed that original simplicity and player friendliness that Little Nightmares had. Before you go to the comments to get angry at me, I'm not critiquing this game for the hell of it. There was some legitimate issues I had with it, and I wouldn't be able to call this video a review if I wasn't being honest about my experience. Moving on. Something that really surprised me going into this game is how it's pretty much all centered around one location. We knew REANIMAL was going to be set on an island, but I definitely did not expect to be revisiting the same locations over and over again. Again, this is just another example of it not being as linear as Little Nightmares, setting itself apart with new game design. This game has a sort of open zone. This is by no means an open world, but it's interesting that they took this approach. It felt like every time I returned to this flooded town section, that I was equipped with new knowledge and experience. It was cool. The whole part with the boat traversal was another nice surprise. It felt kind of God of War-y. My point is that there's a lot that sets this game apart from Little Nightmares. While at first glance you may look at this and think it's the same old stuff, Tarsier did go out of their way to make a bunch of these small changes that add up. Even though it doesn't always work, like I mentioned before, I think REANIMAL is a much less focused feeling game. I'm just glad they didn't imitate their past success now that they're detached from the Little Nightmares IP. I'm always surprised by how Tarsier can make what is ultimately walking simulators and turn them into something so engaging and replayable. I revisit Little Nightmares 1 and 2 every few years, certainly not because of the gameplay, but because of how fascinating that world and its inhabitants are. I'm pleased to say that they did it again here with REANIMAL. They greatly extended upon the mechanics, and it had my jaw constantly dropping. With the new camera, you can drive a boat, an ice cream truck, and without spoiling the ending yet, the vehicle at the end of the game is an amazing sequence too. I also enjoyed some of the flexibility the game gave you with how to approach certain tasks. Specifically the section with the sand kids, you can actually either stealth your way through them or beat their ass, and the game just lets you. Whilst mechanically REANIMAL is an evolution of Tarsiers' previous work, stylistically it's a bit more complicated, but before we move on to that, I do quickly want to mention something that I heard. There's a lot of speculation with why Tarsier left Little Nightmares behind, but something I've been hearing a lot recently is that it wasn't done willingly. Apparently, Bandai Namco just wouldn't give them the IP, so Tarsier moved on and made REANIMAL, which, despite what people have been getting angry at me about, is a spiritual successor. It is essentially a follow-up. I don't think it's unfair to compare REANIMAL to Little Nightmares because there's just so much similarity between the two that it would be silly not to compare. And the point of this video is to look at these two IPs side by side because after the enormous disappointment of Little Nightmares 3, a lot of us were upset that the series is potentially dead. I don't have any hopes that Supermassive will hit those same highs that Tarsier did back when they were in charge, and I hate the excuse that it's Supermassive's first attempt at Little Nightmares because it's not like they're a brand new studio. They've been making big budget horror for years, and if they would have been capable of making a good Little Nightmares game, they would have done so on their first attempt, because there was just so much anticipation for them to deliver, but they didn't. So with that rant out of the way, let's talk about REANIMAL's art direction. Something that I've always loved about Little Nightmares is how it looks. It started a whole stylistic genre almost, with these tiny little kids in a big world filled with megalophobic structures and ginormous creatures. And those enemies are all memorable to me because they're designed in an overly dramatic way, like they're caricatures of their given role. These enemies are so theatrical with the way they look and move. Of course, the one that always comes to mind is the teacher and that damn neck of hers. There's the chefs, the hunter. Everyone is so exaggerated and over the top. I love it. With REANIMAL, I've got to admit, I was a little disappointed by some of these enemies. They have less of a strong identity, which made them less memorable. The sniffer is just some guy. His job is weird and creepy, with him basically recycling corpses so they don't go to waste, but visually there's nothing that interesting about him. He's just a tall, lanky dude.
Kind of like me, but I'm trying to change the lanky part.
I'm not saying that every character design is bad, far from it, but comparing to Tarsier's previous work on Little Nightmares, the enemies here are a little step down for me. The mother and the sheep are amazing looking though. While I was playing through the mother section, it had me badly wanting some more lore on this game, and if there are any other creatures that look like this in this world. You know you've built a great world when you've got players wondering what's outside of where the game is established. One thing I can say positively about Little Nightmares 3 is that it was legitimately a gorgeous game at times, in certain areas, and I didn't think this genre of game could get much better looking, but here comes REANIMAL and it blows it out of the water. The lighting, the atmosphere, it's so good. It's moody and foggy, and you know that when a game has fog, it looks amazing. It's inevitable. The landscapes are gorgeous, the architecture is weird and interesting. There's actually concept art that you can collect throughout the game, and I checked it all out after rolling credits and realized something. Usually when you compare a game's concept art to the final product, the art is way bigger and more grand than the end result. I know concept art isn't meant to look like the final game, but when I see how enormous Red Dead 2's art is and how stylish and beautiful. I get a little upset with what we got, which is insane because that game looks amazing. With REANIMAL's concept art, this is possibly the first time I've seen it look exactly like the final game. Tarsier went out and achieved exactly what they wanted to achieve, and because of that, you've gotta respect them. Throughout your playthrough, you visit loads of distinct locations, and you never feel like this looks like the previous area. It always keeps itself looking and feeling fresh. Whilst at a first glance, REANIMAL may look similar to Little Nightmares, I think generally it's trying to accomplish a completely different vision while not straying too far from what Tarsier is best at. REANIMAL separates itself tonally because it is a hell of a lot darker than what I was expecting. There'll be some heavy spoilers for the rest of the video, so if you haven't beaten the game yet, I suggest you kindly see yourself out. The ending arc with the sheep going from a creepy little lamb to a damn kaiju hit me in a way that I didn't expect. The sheep keeps growing and getting lumpier and lumpier, and I was actually so disturbed by it. I felt a certain feeling that I've only felt a handful of times in my life. Just seeing this creature expand and contort to unnatural lengths made me feel a little sick, and this falls under the body horror aspect of REANIMAL. See, the big thing separating this from Little Nightmares is that whilst the latter was about theatrical, dramatic caricatures, REANIMAL takes a more simple approach with its horror. It leans into disturbing, organic contortion and expansion. The megalophobia aspect is shown throughout. There's these creepy naked humans that stand around silently and watch you before eventually they get flattened down into these corpse snakes. For me, this is exactly the type of horror that actually affects me. I try to avoid it at all costs usually, but if you are interested in this kind of stuff, I highly suggest checking out David Cronenberg's films. There's some of the few that have managed to make me physically sick, and this is the exact same feeling I had while playing REANIMAL. The ending is where this game really peaks for me. Without it, I probably would have given the game a 6.5 out of 10, but that final half hour or so is something special, with the portrayal of war, of hopelessness, of trauma. That's a whole different can of worms that I'm not even qualified to open. There are so many better video essayists on YouTube who'll do this justice, but just know that I really loved it. The actual ending itself, with the reveal of the kids sacrificing the girl, you can see the evolution of Tarsier's writing over the years, especially in the endings. The first Little Nightmares was kind of whatever. The second one was really good and had everyone wondering what the hell happened. And now we've got this, which feels bigger and more mysterious and more messed up than ever before. I need more horror games to be exploring stories about cults and rituals because it's some freaky, creepy stuff. So to end this video, has REANIMAL dethroned Little Nightmares? I think it's fair to compare the two because of how similar they are, but at the same time, REANIMAL isn't trying to imitate Little Nightmares. Tarsier have taken the LN foundations and expanded upon them in a big way. While Little Nightmares 3 whittled down what the series was truly about, REANIMAL takes that and builds on top of it, adding new mechanics, a new tone, a new potentially even scarier world. Little Nightmares 2 is still my favorite game from them, but REANIMAL is now a very close second. Again, the only issue is that some of the design elements are not distinct enough. A lot of the characters aren't iconic and maybe a little forgettable, but then you've got other enemies and set pieces which make up for it. I didn't know when to mention this before, so I'll just say it now. I do think the price point is a little egregious for such a short game. I finished it in just over 3 hours, and it's not that the game wasn't great. I got a lot of value out of it, but I paid £35 or $40 for it, and I felt like that was a little bit high. £20 to £25 would have been a lot more acceptable, but it is what it is. I know some of you won't agree with my sentiments. I know people would pay high prices for a good game, but it does reach a point for me if the price is too high. I want to know your thoughts on REANIMAL though. you? Is it what you expected, or were you as surprised as me? If you did enjoy this video, check out my Little Nightmares 3 critique, because I'm still holding a grudge against that game. I'm gonna clock out now. See ya.